It is 1860. The nation is fracturing, and the man elected to save it is plagued by a voice of doubt. The burden of the Union was his. The weight of every dead soldier, every hostile headline.
He called it his melancholy, a shadow of crippling self-doubt.
But what if that crippling doubt, that very imposter syndrome, wasn't a weakness at all? What if it was the hidden, psychological weapon that led him to victory? This is the psychological story behind the greatest test of American leadership.
Abraham Lincoln was not supposed to be president. He was a self-taught prairie lawyer with less political experience than his rivals. He constantly felt the sting of inadequacy.
In his own letters, he described feelings of unworthiness and debilitating depression.
This wasn't merely humility. It was a profound, deep-seated belief that he was an imposter in the halls of power. But this flaw, this psychological burden, became the source of his genius.
Before we dive into how this psychological flaw became his strategy, if you find value in these deep dive analyses, take a moment to hit the like button and subscribe. Your support is the only way we can continue to bring these untold stories to light. The first proof of this adaptive strategy was his cabinet of rivals. Any insecure leader would surround himself with subservient allies. Lincoln did the opposite.
He filled his cabinet with the very men who had publicly scorned him. Giants like William Seward, Salmon Chase, and Edwin Stanton.
He knew he was outmatched in experience, so he did not seek comfort. He sought competence. His insecurity demanded that he employ the best minds in the nation, even if they hated him. He allowed the doubt in his mind to ensure there was no doubt in his counsel.
Radical honesty about his own limitations extended to his command of the military. Lincoln was not a general, and he knew it.
He cycled through commanders, sometimes brutally, not out of malice, but because his lack of military ego allowed him to constantly reevaluate the performance of others.
Where a confident ego might become entrenched in a bad strategy, Lincoln's lack of confidence allowed for fluid, even painful self-correction.
He maintained an open mind and a ruthless focus on the ultimate objective: preserve the Union, regardless of who got the credit.
And then there was the Gettysburg Address. It wasn't a speech written by a bombastic, arrogant orator. It was written by a man who believed he had failed. He feared his words would be forgotten.
That lack of hubris is what makes the address timeless. It is short, profound, and utterly focused on the sacrifice of others, not the ego of the speaker.
77 years ago, our fathers brought forth upon this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Now, we are engaged in a great civil war, testing whether that nation, or any nation, so conceived and so dedicated, can long endure. And that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth.
His fear of being found out, his imposter syndrome, forced his focus onto the fundamental, enduring truth of the American experiment.
So, how do we reframe this historical psychology for our own lives? We realize that imposter syndrome has two forms: debilitating and adaptive.
The debilitating form paralyzes you, forcing you to quit. The adaptive form, the one Lincoln mastered, forces you to over-prepare, seek better counsel, and stay humble.
We can learn to harness that critical inner voice.
First, recruit your rivals. Stop seeking validation and start seeking competence. If you feel like an imposter in a job, find the smartest people you can and learn from them. Lincoln's cabinet was his masterclass.
Second, embrace radical reevaluation. Your doubt is a signal, not a sentence. Use the sting of inadequacy to force yourself to recheck your assumptions. Don't let ego lock you into a failing plan.
Finally, focus on the mission. Lincoln's self-doubt was always subordinate to the singular, clear objective, saving the Union. When the inner voice criticizes your worth, refocus your entire being on the value you are creating for others.
The man who doubted himself the most became the president we remember the best. His greatest weakness was, in the end, his most powerful strategy.
The voice that calls you an imposter can be transformed into the greatest guiding force for your success.
If you made it this far, thank you for being a part of the start of this journey. Leave a comment telling us which historical figure you want us to analyze next. And make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the next episode on Marcus Aurelius.